All right. Everyone, I know it's been a little bit of time since I've done a podcast episode. Kind of took a little bit of a break, had some work things, a lot of overtime at my job to kind of navigate through. Had to do a lot of canceling on bands, unfortunately, and I didn't like doing that. So I kind of put a stop to it for just a brief moment. But I'm finally able to get an artist from a label that I'm really big on called Fixed. And if you don't know, that was founded by Clayton and another individual that I can't remember his name. And
James.
if you don't know who Clayton is, James, it was James. Okay.
Yeah.
James and Clayton. And if you don't know who Clayton is, that's Cell Dweller, Circle of Dust. Wow, this is going to make it look like I don't know my Clayton, but he has several other projects that he does as well. But I'm most familiar with Cell Dweller myself.
Have you
Um,
heard
I'm going,
Scandroid?
huh?
Have you
Scandroid,
heard
yes,
Scan?
that one. That was one. That was an awesome one for people that are familiar with that one. Look into all of it. All of Clayton's
Yeah.
stuff is great. But I am joined by an individual who I really respect. I've been listening to his music for a couple of years now. So you can still kind of call me new, but I'm not at the same time. But David, also known as the Plague, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well today. Thanks. I
Yeah.
had no idea
Uh,
that you've been listening to Plague for a couple of years. That's a huge honor. I
yeah,
It's done.
yeah. I follow Fix and I follow Clayton, and I try to be aware of things that he's doing. And I believe it was through something that either he had posted or I had seen in like some kind of interview where he was talking about artists that were going to be coming onto the roster and everything. And I believe the Plague was name dropped because if I'm not mistaken, Future was 2017 for that album, right? And then it was re-released, correct?
Yeah, it
Right.
was. Mhm.
So yeah, it's been a couple of years for me listening to your stuff, and I love it. I'm very into like that electro kind of rock, kind of punky kind of sound, and always have been. And also, like I said, I like your messages and your music. It's not to say that all of it is uplifting. You do touch on some of the darker stuff because you gotta get that stuff out. You gotta work through it, and from song helps, and it's part of the process of being a better person. Talking about and being open. Um, I want to ask you about the backstory in brief for how your journey with music kind of started to take shape, uh, whether it was in your younger years or a little bit later on, and go from there.
Wow. Well, it's I'm gonna turn 41 next month. So my history is I'm trying to figure out if I can tell a condensed version of it. I started playing in my first band when I was 10, which my
Wow.
grandma got me a guitar. She prayed about it, and she said that she felt like God was saying that it would be good to get me an electric guitar. And I had played a few other instruments
Mm-hmm.
before that, but the electric guitar I just loved. It was like my favorite thing. It was the first thing I ever was so captivated by that I just focused on it all the time. My family had a garage sale, and I ran around to every person who came up and said, "Can I help you find something? Can I help you find something?" And I don't know if they thought that this little kid was like adorable to help, by buying stuff, but I sold enough stuff that I went to Tower Records and I spent all the money that my parents let me keep on just all the top 10 records at the time. So it was like Boys to Men, Spin
Uh,
Doctors, Green Day, Stone Temple Pilots. I think it must have been, yeah, it was like 1994 then, I guess. So I was 11, and I just sat down and I learned. Like, I just played along with all those records. I had my headphones and I had my Squire
uh,
Stratocaster. I would play all the time. So a couple of my friends and I started a band, which was one person on an electric drum pad. I think he was like 13. He was the oldest of us. And
mhm.
then my friend who was the singer, and then I played guitar. So I did that through well, yeah, since I was 10, I've been playing music like that. But when I moved to upstate New York, when my family moved here, when I was a teenager, the first show that my band played, a promoter came up to us and asked us if we wanted to play Warped Tour, which was just
Wow.
yeah, all our
That
heroes played on Warped Tour, and that seemed like fiction to us, just like mythology. So our minds were blown, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll totally do it." So then the person just disappeared, and we felt like, man, people talk about how there's empty promises in the music industry. I think I was 15 or 16 at the
Mhm.
time. So, well, here's a huge lesson about how things, people make promises and they don't happen. And so about a year later, we kept gigging, we kept playing, and our band actually was getting bigger in Rochester. People were coming to our shows, and
Mhm.
we were starting to like pack venues and stuff like that. And this we played pop punk. It was what was popular at the time,
Oh yeah.
and which is funny, right? Like an upper middle class kids pretending like being mad at the establishment. It's really like we were a punk band that played like no effects type music, but like a year later, and this is the dramatization in my head. I'm pretty sure it wasn't actually like this, but I remember the promoter coming running up to us out of breath at a show, like he had been trying to get us on Warped Tour for the entire year. He's like, "You did it! I got you going on Warped
Oh
Tour,"
my
and we're
God.
yeah, right, dude. We had been so burned and we felt so betrayed, and we're like, "Yeah, right. We don't believe you." He's like, "No, I promise." I had just gotten in a car accident and I had gotten
Okay.
a so I spent it on getting us a van and all of this gear. And we were like, we're going to trust this guy and see if we can go play on Warped Tour. So we packed our van and we drove from New York to Idaho. And we were the first people in this empty parking lot in the morning. And we're just sitting there. And I'm like, is this even going to happen? And slowly, like, vans start to show up, and trucks and buses. And then we start to see all our heroes, like Mike from MXPX and Mike from NoFX. There's a lot of Mikes and a lot of four-letter X bands, I guess. But as all these people start showing up and a line starts showing up to get passes from production, and so we get in line. And the name of our band was Third Estate. And so we're waiting in line and we're nervous and we're looking around like this and we're like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? And we get to the front of the line. They're like, what's the name of your band? And we said Third Estate. And they look down, they go, you're not on the tour.
Oh.
Like, oh my gosh, what did we do? And then the person next to him goes, yeah, no, they are. They're right there. And he goes, oh, okay. And they gave us passes and we were on the whole Warped Tour in 2002. And that was kind of a platform for everyone in our band to start doing things in the music industry. Our band didn't keep going forever, obviously. We broke up probably about 3 or 4 years later, but we played
Mhm.
Warped literally after that. We played with bigger names, and now the bass player from that band is the bass from Ron is the bass player for Wolfgang Van Halen. He plays for him
Wow.
now, and Gary plays drums for a band called Mest now. He was in the Plague for a little
I'm
bit,
familiar with, yeah.
and an assortment of other things. So that was sort of like a platform. We were what they call a Warped Tour band. We were the smallest, if not one of the smallest bands on the tour. We were just like the Tap-Ons, and we felt so lucky. But it was a good platform to start a career and get some name recognition and some experience.
Mhm.
So we ended up eventually working with someone who's one of my closest friends now. His name's Earl Cohen. He was responsible for discovering like Lady Gaga, and he worked with Whitney Houston and all these people. He's
Whoa.
he's like my mentor as far as I've had a pretty modest career, and he has had a very you know elaborate career with Grammys and stuff like that.
Yeah, those are two really big names that you just said.
I mean, he's one of those, he was had a great career in the 80s and still
Mhm.
keeps so like if you look up Earl Cohen's credits, you'll see that he's worked with a jaw-dropping amount of people. And so yeah, I was just lucky that he took me under his wing, and he showed me the ropes about production and a bunch of stuff like that. And then I got into recovery. struggled with addiction my whole life. And so I started to take recovery really seriously. And that's kind of when the band ended. I started producing bands out of Boston. I opened up a recording studio. I was planning on starting producing bands and going to Berklee College for Music. And I got in on a scholarship. And the first day I went and I said, hey, I'd like to skip the first 2 years and go straight into your music production and engineering department. Here's my credits and here's some of the things I've worked on. And they said that I should probably just skip going to school there. And I'd already moved there. So I just started producing bands from Boston, and bands would fly. I opened up a recording studio and people would fly from all over the world to come do stuff. You know, so sometimes I wish I had still done the education part, although I produced bands from Boston that were working at Berklee. It was interesting because sometimes I have to fill in the gaps. So I'll program strings, or I'll play a guitar part, or I'll help them arrange stuff when bands come through. And if I did something that was just outside of a key, like maybe I did like a dominant chord change, or like did a weird turnaround, if they didn't like it, you could tell that they were in ear training 1. And if they loved it, they were in ear training 2. You could kind of tell what year they were in. So like it became a game that I'd play where I'd do stuff, and depending on how much they'd object or like the things that were happening, I would guess where they were in their education. But, you know, I think that those educations can be extremely valuable in a lot of senses, even if it's just the socialization and stuff. So sometimes I wish I had still gone, but around, you know, I don't even know the year, but I know it was my late 20s. My dad got sick with cancer, so I moved back to upstate New York, and I sold the studio, and that's when I started The Plague, and took four or 5 years or so just to make the first record, and ended up getting signed to Fixed and re-releasing it, and now here we are on the Plague second record, which is the first record we're releasing on Fixed.
Wow, that's a long journey, man, to condense like that. That's still crazy, the Warped Tour, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was.
That's impressive.
Well, you know,
and then
was the biggest year for it. If I'm remembering correctly, please fact check that, take it with a grain of salt. But if I remember correctly, it was when it was peaking. So like, it was just insane. We're trying to keep up with all this stuff, and there's a whole culture, and a lot of the bands have friendships, and we were kids. It was pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And real quick, man, I just want to say and applaud you and say congratulations on the whole addiction thing, man. That's not easy to overcome. And so I just want to acknowledge that fight and that struggle and say, man, that's really great to hear. You know, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's all because of God, and I wouldn't even say that the struggle's over, not because I have drug or alcohol addictions or anything like that. Like, but currently, you know, I'm trying to manage my caffeine is something that I want to eliminate from my life. I think I'm crutching a bit on that, and a few other things that, although they are like super detrimental, and they're probably societally normal, like I unfortunately in my mid-30s almost died of a drug overdose.
Right.
And so when I survived that, I quit all the things surrounding that. The drugs were linked with pornography, and so I attend a program, a 12-step program that, you know, I've been clean from drugs, pornography, and anything in the sexual realm for over 4 years now, and it's been a huge blessing on my life. And I'm just grateful to God for that. Yeah,
I mean, praise Him for that, man. You know, for people that kind of struggle with the whole faith thing, and for me personally, the faith thing is I have this disconnect with church, right? Like I feel like it's a little bit of a far cry from what it's supposed to be in the Bible for what they teach in there and stuff. I don't want to put every church under that umbrella, and so I made a personal choice for myself that I would just have that relationship just in my head and not go to church, you know?
Sure.
Not sure if that's like, you know, the way to go about it, but it's worked for me. And I just want to say that for people that are skeptical, give it a try. You know, you never know what you'll find. It may not turn out to be for you when you do try it, and at least you could say that you gave it a shot, right? But
As far as church,
huh?
as far as church,
Or just God and Jesus in general, you know, stuff like that. Because you know how skeptical people could be about it, and Noel Street likes kind of taboo to want to believe
absolutely.
or even talk about it. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying, be loud, you know, like you are about it, and just spread the word, you know, because it does affect people in very positive ways that open themselves up to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, it's such a personal topic. That's why, you know,
Yeah.
I think respecting people's choices with it is so important. I used to be an atheist. Then I believed in God, but wasn't a Christian. And then I had a profound experience where Jesus appeared before me and transformed my life. And it was so supernatural that I couldn't deny it. And when I went to go explain it to people, they just brushed it off. And I couldn't believe it. Showed me how much the moment before that happened to me, if someone had told me it happened to them, I would have brushed it off. So I know that it's like so insanely personal. But, you know, I had this experience where, well, there's so many experiences, but the Bible talks about ask, seek, and knock. And that's where it's like, when you say try it out for yourself, that's what I think of is I was in a place where some people who I really trusted, that were kind, understanding people who had a spiritual sense that I couldn't put my finger on. They said they were not pushy about God at all, but they just said the Bible says ask, seek, and knock. And I just remember I said a prayer and I was like, God, if you could help me reconcile, I don't believe in you because I believe in science. I've been taught all these things. And if you could just help me to see something if you exist. And a little bit later, this thought just randomly popped in my head, which is that the Bible talks about how there's let there be light is in Genesis. And we believe that the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe. And what a way to communicate to people who didn't have put together the Big Bang when the stories were written for the Bible, that was like the beginning of the universe. Let there be light. And it was this like 1%. And now I'm very familiar with the voice of God, and I'm familiar with the feeling of having a prayer answered and God handing me some revelation. But at the time I was like, oh my gosh, that was the answer to the prayer, wasn't it? And then I'm like, nah, it wasn't. I'm just opening a door because, you know, there's justifications that you can have that maybe are even valid. But the more that I leaned into prayer and then treating the responses like they were a relationship with God, the more coincidences happened, the more things profoundly changed, until eventually in the spirit realm, Jesus appeared before me. He told me all of these profound things. And I saw the spirit realm started glowing brighter and brighter inside me, and then it turned red, and I saw Jesus on the cross, and I understood for the first time that Jesus was the first human that had forgiveness built into his spirit. And I accepted Jesus, and I felt my spirit come alive in eternity. And I went around talking to my friends. I'm like, my spirit's alive in eternity. They're like, why are you touching your hip? I'm like, because I have the memory of Jesus getting stabbed on the cross, which I did not know. And then I looked it up, and Jesus got stabbed with a spear on the cross. And like,
Right, yeah.
my belief is that's when his spirit left him, the water of life left him, and was able to enter us like throughout time. Anyway, without getting too nuts sounding on your podcast here,
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
I all of a sudden innately knew all this stuff that was in the Bible that I hadn't read before. And God started communicating with me about some profound things. I asked him, what should I do with my life? And he said Deuteronomy, which I had to Google. And it turns out that's a book in the Bible that's about how the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. And then they started listening to God, and they found the promised land. And when I looked it up in my Bible, there's a description, and it says, because God wanted to give the Israelites a hope for the future, which is the title of the album I was like promoting at the time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like so many things, which, you know, are easy to call a coincidence, but I don't believe in those anymore. So.
Yeah, but throughout the whole thing you were saying, I just want to say how just like profound all that is, and it brought to mind your song "Clean Slate." And when you're explaining all that, was that song kind of born out of that whole like feeling like you've been reborn as a person from like a particular experience, or were you just kind of basing it from a you could start something new at any point in your life
Yeah, you
kind of
can.
thing for that song?
Well, the Bible does talk about Jesus can make people as clean as the driven snow. So I think there is a sense of that, and I think that's true. Unfortunately, Clean Slate is about how I've been having 3 to 4 years of just constant surgeries to like put together my face and my body after almost dying of a drug overdose. And I did abuse drugs and almost die after I knew Jesus. It was the one relapse that I had since I became a Christian, and I was aware of how I was betraying him the whole time. And this spirit sense that communicates with me the whole time, it was showing me how the pornography I consumed was related to trauma that I had and how I was trying to resolve all these things. And it was not condemning me, but it was trying to show me, it told me how complicated all the surgery was going to be, and it didn't stop me, unfortunately. And so once I came to my senses and became clean, and now I'm in a life where I lost my closest relationships and I lost my feeling of being able to breathe and be healthy and my appearance, and I'm struggling to get my health back together, which I think is possible to restore, but there's just a sense of extreme grief and how I don't know. I just hope God can use my mistakes for good, and how I'm looking to turn the page, and forgive myself and accept God's forgiveness, and hopefully maybe one day even get the forgiveness of the people that I hurt. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but even more for the reason of like more than getting a relationship restored, I know how much forgiveness can be freeing for the person who does it. So I think the people that I've hurt deserve to be free from the bondages of the pain that I've contributed to their lives.
I'm no stranger to things like that in my life. There's been people that I've done similar things to in my life, as far as like trusts being broken and things like that. And what I found is it can be very, very hard to earnestly forgive yourself, for anything, a lot of the time, even believing that you could be better than that version of yourself that did those things. And I guess what I would say from my perspective of stuff like that is that, having only just met you and been able to talk to you, you sound like the kind of person that means what they say when you're striving for that change and seeing that person in the mirror that you want to be proud of. Right. I 100% believe that you're going to get there, man. Like 100% believe it. Like, and I would say you're going to run into the struggles in that fight. Clearly, everyone does, and don't let that deter you, because everybody has a mountain to climb. It's not just one. There's several in your life. So I have faith in you, my friend.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have faith in you too.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to switch gears, let's touch a bit on about like processes for how a song idea might be born, and like your process for lyrics. And what I have written down is just anything that could inspire. Like it could be like news, or like the weather, or just anything at all you witness, or even a dream you have, when you're sleeping. Just how does it all start for you?
I normally, there's a bunch of different ways it can start, but the most ideal way would be that I sit down and I come up with a melody against a piano or guitar. And what I'm looking for is like special intervals and combinations that are very simple and digestible. So like repeatable
Mhm.
and hooky, where you'd want to hum them, but not complicated. It reminds me of like using how I prefer to use vocabulary, which is sometimes having a verbose vernacular and using perspicacity to communicate a
Mhm.
concept is a good idea, but sometimes just using the right word when it's simple is more effective. So like if someone says I love you and you trust them, that means so much. It doesn't matter that it's been said before, it just matters the person it's coming from. So I don't really get caught up in trying to come up with something that's groundbreaking for the world. I try to come up with something that's groundbreaking for me, something that is really says what I'm trying to say and is simple for the most part. It can be complicated, but as complicated as it needs
Mhm.
to be to express the idea. So anyway, once I get a melody like that, I kind of throw together a demo. I feel like starting with the chorus melody is always my favorite. And whatever it makes me feel like, I try to think about what are real things that are going on in my life that make me feel that way. So if it's about frustration, like what is the thing I'm most frustrated about? And that's normally how I find a topic. So, um, like right now, I'm really, there's a song, there's a song called Headline that was the first song that came out off the record, uh, off this new record. And at the time, I had the melody and I had the chorus, and I didn't quite have the lyrics. I was like, da 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 da, and I was like going back and forth between Headline or whether the song could be called Deadline, where it was about trying to like connect with my father and make the most out of the time with him before he passed away, which also is like powerful. I was like headline, deadline, and then but I was really upset at a lot of the propaganda in the news.
Okay.
And like, I just had more to say about it at that moment, not to say that it's necessarily both topics sound important, but that's just how I would try to gauge what I was trying to write about. So yeah, and then I just would double down on trying to consume stuff about, like, I tried to educate myself on the history of propaganda in the United States and found out about the no Nobel Prize. Wait, what's the award that they give you for?
Is it Nobel or Nobel oh wait I know the one you're trying to say. It's
Yeah,
I know the one. It's not coming to me though.
Pulitzer Prize.
Okay.
Yeah, for journalism. Yes. Is there a Pulitzer Peace Prize? I'm telling you, I did research, and now I'm sounding like I have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I did a little bit of research about that and like how apparently then they started educating journalists on how to structure their um, essentially starts becoming propaganda because there was one presidency, don't quote me on this, but Reagan, and there was something about Ford had a recall, and if they promoted it a certain way, it would have crashed the economy. So they needed to have the news say that the recall was something positive. I'm forgetting the details because it was a while ago that I
Yeah.
was doing the research, but it was sort of like the beginning of the machine starting to spin what they tell the public in order to get the results of the economy and stuff like they want, and the tie-ins with corporations sort of pushing the agenda that they need in order to have the control that they want. And I just thought it was fascinating. So we're obviously at like the apex of that whole
Mhm.
machine happening now in today's society, and it's just generating more polarization and all this stuff where I don't think that humans are meant to have this much social connectivity where we can just get bombarded with all the most important things all day and everyone gets polarized.
Yeah, you open your Facebook and it's just like so much stuff that you scroll past in like the first like 20 seconds even.
Totally. It's like
and it,
so much stuff that if you were living a natural life without a phone, if one of those things happened in front of you, it would be like startling and you would remember it. It would be like a significant life moment, but we just do those significant life moments like all day long to the point where we're just like burnt out on it. And the other thought that constantly goes through my mind is, if you say like polar seltzer, most people have some kind of spectrum of feeling about this, but if you go, it's the best or it's the worst, and you have to choose, people are going to be like, best. And some people are like, no, it's the worst. And now people are arguing over something that they don't care about because it's so much more extreme than it needs to be. And everything gets pushed to the most extreme version because there's so much pressure to conform to some kind of group about any opinion.
yeah.
It's like such a whole different cultural attitude. It's like not natural,
Yeah, absolutely. Another big example of that is like the current Linkin Park fiasco that's going on that's just consuming everybody's feed. It's like, yeah, it's a big deal. I'm a big fan myself and I have my own feelings about it, but at the same time it's like it's being made into such a bigger deal than it should be,
Yeah. What are your feelings
so
about it?
I get that. Huh?
What are your feelings about it?
Well, so I the whole like ties with Danny and then the whole Scientology stuff. It's I was talking to a friend in another band, and he was saying that to him, and I kind of agree with it. Whether it's like Christianity or any other kind of like faith-based thing or religion that someone follows, there's always something negative or some kind of stigma that people want to attach to it. Not to say that any of it is not true or is true with Scientology or any religion like Christianity and stuff like that, but he said that why should it matter so much if she believes in that if you're there for the music, or if in like the whole Danny thing, she made her statement about that, and you really can't say if it was an honest statement or if she was telling the truth or otherwise. So you may as well just take her at her word, right? And so that's what I'm doing. And I've kind of moved past all that. And where I'm still a little bit hung up is the whole getting used to the voice and getting used to the face that's now central next to Mike, right? Because just like yourself, I'm sure 20 plus years of just like that undeniable or dynamic and chemistry with those two on the stage together and how they played off of each other. Now we've got to get used to a whole new dynamic, right?
And they've got to get used to it. They're like, that's kind of the cool thing is like they're just warming up.
Yeah.
They have hit their stride even. They're like, this is a good thing we want to commit to and see how far we can take it. And I'm curious to see, because it's going to be a whole different animal. I love the fact that they got a female because it sort of says we're not trying to do the past, we're trying to do the future. And
I agree with that. Yeah. I think it was the right move.
But I saw an interview with Mike Shinoda. Well, it was all of Linkin Park, but Mike Shinoda was saying that they had to figure out, would they do this even if no one liked it? And that's the condition, because they're up against such a history. It's like so hard, right? Thriller, that Michael Jackson record, largest selling record of all time, over 100 million copies. It's like so far in the lead. I think the second biggest selling record of all time is like 50 or 60 million.
Something around there.
Yeah. And so it's like Michael Jackson is just so crazy in the lead there. If you think about how many people are on the planet, do you know how many people didn't buy his record?
Quite a bit.
Almost everyone didn't buy it. So even when you're that famous and the biggest selling artist of all time, it's still just a drop in the bucket of popularity. So everyone knows Michael Jackson, but I would say even most people aren't fans of him enough to buy his record, like the vast majority. So how that applies to Linkin Park is like, they're so big, and then you change something, it's like their fan base is probably going to be smaller, but they're going to be up against such a backlash of people who have less of opinion now. And it's not, even being really popular, there's still so many people who are just maybe lukewarm on
Yeah.
something. It's a tough thing to be popular. You're up against mostly backlash or indifference.
Most of the time it's the backlash. And I didn't want to bring up, we are at 35 minutes. How much longer would you want to go for? I only have a few more things that we could touch on anyway.
Let's keep cooking, man. It's all
right.
good.
But no, I'm there with you with the your statements about, you know, the popularity and what they're up against and stuff. I think that people are being a little bit over dramatic, honestly, about, you know, the whole thing. She's a great vocalist too. You know, and initially when it was announced and I listened to that live concert that they streamed for free, I had some very strong opinions and I was super critical of her vocal performance because, as you know, Chester was quite an impressive voice and powerful. So those songs weren't going to be easy for anybody that stepped into those shoes to sing. And I had the mistake made of, I guess, putting my expectations a little unfairly high for whoever it was, right? I'm not going to say that now I'm like sold on every song that she's sang from their back catalog, but I also equate that to she's going to find her groove. She's going to find her rhythm with those songs and what works for her voice, right?
Yeah.
So I hope most other people could kind of come to that own realization as well and open their mind and their heart to her being the face of the band now, because she's better than what people are unfairly judging her of not being good enough, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, some people, you know, and some people really give them credit. Some people love it. Some people will be slow to warm up, and some people, like, there's so many people involved in having an opinion that it's like there's all shapes and sizes. I think that people want to get attached, and it's some people it's not going to happen for, and some people I bet you they're going to come up with new songs that are just a completely new vibe, that it's like it's a different band. Like, I think that's one of the things. You could make an argument that maybe they could have just made a new project, and that could have maybe skipped some of the stigma, but then they wouldn't have played the songs live. There's all these people that want to see the songs regardless. You know, unfortunately, you know, we have to let go of Chester doing it.
That's the reality. It is, yeah.
I mean, until I just said that, I've never thought about, and you're up against that too as Linkin Park, right? It's like people are going to still want something that they can't get, and like be hurt, angry, all sorts of ways about it. So
yeah,
that's, you know, it takes a lot of bravery to step up there. I mean, like, the courage that it takes for her to step up there.
Yeah.
It's probably, so this gig is dope, and also this gig is hard.
Exactly. Like, before we move on to the next thing, that's exactly my thought too. Like, she had to have been so nervous to go up in front of all those people for that first show that they did in private. And then at the Kia Forum, where there was just thousands and thousands and thousands of people there, not to mention Chester's son was there.
Yeah.
Also, it's just like, I can't even comprehend that in my head, how I would have handled something like that. So I have to respect how she's handling it in the first place and just having the courage to even do it.
Yeah. I mean, in the first moments, everybody's just like, pass or fail, is like, they're not even seeing the nuances. They're just like, pass or fail. I thought she crushed it. I honestly thought she crushed it. So.
The next thing I'm going to segue into is, let's touch a little bit about how you came to find yourself with Fixed. And I'm kind of mashed together the whole thing about wanting to kind of know how Clayton was, if you met him in person and, you know, talked with him and everything, just your experience on the label and with him and the other artists that you're there on there with.
Well, everybody's from all over the place. So I actually haven't really met anyone in person. I've met a ton of people like we're meeting now, so virtually. So I've virtually met him. Yeah. The first time that I met him, I think I was signed already? No, it was when we were talking about signing. Um, and I just remember he had to get his camera set up for the thing, so he was just a little bit late. And James was like, "Oh yeah, no, he's getting his camera set up." And then his camera came on, and he had to put it up like this, and then he stepped back like this, and he had his hair up in the studio, and it was like a very good angle. And I was just like, "Yeah, he was working on the presentation." And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and um, Clayton's just a really easy guy to relate with, and um, in my limited experience with him, he's been a joy to relate with. The coolest thing is that I was such a big fan of his before signing to the label, and he was a big inspiration. I must have listened to Louder Than Words like 10,000 times while I was making the first Plague record. Um, let's see. When I was working in Boston and I owned a studio, I had an assistant, and I was doing stutter edits where I was chopping up vocals and making them go and doing weird things. And he's like, "Dude, you're like this guy Cell Dweller." And I'm like, "Who's Cell Dweller?" And they were selling EPs at the time. I don't know if you remember this, but they had this model where they were just putting out like 3 songs at a time. And so
Uh-huh.
they were spreading like volumes, like every little volume that they would put out. And so we listened to it, and I thought it was so cool. So I reached out to them. Oh, that's right. Then one day, the assistant, John, who went on to produce Lil Weezy, some Lil something.
Well,
He had a #1 record with this with a hip hop artist. I can't remember who it was. I could look it up. His name's John Scott. He's an amazing producer. At the time, he was my assistant, and he came in and he's like, "Did you know that Cell Dweller's looking for an assistant? You should do it." So I hit up James and I said, "Hey, I'm a big fan, and I heard that you're looking for someone in the studio." And we talked back and forth, and it didn't quite come together at that point in time. I was really busy, and I had some big projects that I wanted to do, and the timing wasn't right. So later, when I finished the Plague record and it was on my label and I had done all this stuff, I messaged James and I said, "Look, I'm like your little brother. I did it. I played all the instruments. I did it all myself. It's on my label." I'm like, and he got back to me. He's like, "Yo, let's talk," and wanted to talk about signing. And so after it was a few years before we signed. I not only did we do our own thing, but then COVID happened, and then I like issues overwhelmed my life. And when I ended up signing, we were at a meeting where like there's a lot of meetings where the bands and artists and the staff over at Fixed get together and we talk on calls about different things. And we were supposed to say how we met, and I was like, "Oh well, I applied to be Clayton's assistant at one point in time," and James was like, they like didn't put together that it was me. They just heard from when I sent it and didn't realize that we had a conversation 6 years before that. And so they looked up the email and he sent it to me, and it had such a nice sign off. It was like, "Well, unfortunately, it looks like this isn't going to work out, but I'm still a huge fan of you guys, and I hope we get to do something in the future." And he sent the little screenshot of like that little part to me. He's like, so cute, prophetic, I guess we could say. But
right.
yeah, I mean, it's we're a little family over there in the sense that we get together fairly often on calls. Some of the cool stuff that Fix does is they have production meetings where they'll have people outside of Fixed that do video game scoring or production or marketing come do seminars, and we do like Zoom calls where we all get to ask questions and stuff like that. Or we have listening parties where we listen to the new releases that are coming out before they come out, and everyone gets to comment. Or if you want to get notes, but you're like, "Oh, I'm working on this song," everybody can talk about stuff. So like, yeah, the guys from Fight the Fade, Coping Method, High Society, Izzy Rain, The Annex. Beyond Unbroken, and I'm sure there's a bunch more I could keep going on. But yeah, like we get to see each other often enough. For me, I make what I think is most of the meetings. Somebody might correct me and tell me that I'm missing more than I think, but I'm just like swamped over here in the studio all the time. So I think that's how
I can
most of
imagine.
yeah, we're just, I'm a solo artist and I just took on an assistant and a social media manager. So now I have some help, but it's just a lot of work for one person to do. And with deadlines and really wanting to take things to the next level, it's a big time investment for one person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I'd even be able to do it. And you said about kind of what I felt like you might say about Fix, because it's kind of almost, it's already an apparent thing, and the things that I've seen like videos and like read about the label, that it's just it's a really great place to be and be a part of. So I mean, we all know horror stories of like major labels and like how some experiences are with them and all that. What had my weather thing pop up in my face just now. So it's just nice to hear when a label is just so like family oriented as far as like the artists and the people that work there, and just the environment's like real nice to be in. So I love hearing that, because it's reflecting in your music, I think, too. Just like your music just sounds like it's your creative space, and just who you talk back and forth with when you're making the music is all of it works, so. And I do want to, before I start wrapping this up, because I'm going to need to, be respectful of your time, I want to touch on Float Right On By.
Great.
And talk about your new track. I've been posting about it on my Facebook page and trying to get people to listen to it. I think of the batch of the new songs, it's a really hard toss up of if Clean Slate or this one is my favorite of the batch so far, because I connect to both of them in different ways. Like with Float Right On By, I agree about wanting to break free of like self-destructive things and all that, but also really like the whole concept of a clean slate. And like I said earlier, starting over at any point. So real quick, if you want to summarize it in brief about Float Right On By, I'll let you get into it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd love the opportunity, because there's a bunch of stuff I'd like for your viewers to know. The Float Right On By is the new song that just came out on Friday, which was the 13th.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about it is that we partnered with a charity called Agape International Missions.
Yeah, I saw that.
They fight sex trafficking. And this isn't like, I don't know what you might picture when you think about a charity fighting sex trafficking, but it's not like you donate to them and then they just funnel funds to places and stuff like this. These people go with a freaking SWAT team, I don't know if that's the name, and break down the doors after when they know where the places are, and freaking save the victims and rehabilitate them. They like are doing the freaking work. They're there. So I've been having a personal relationship with them for a while now, and I thought that when I wrote the song, I wanted it, the entire time I was making the song, I just pictured it having a lyric video or a music video that across the bottom says, all income that the plague makes from this goes to fight sex trafficking. Just a ticker tape going across the bottom. Fortunately, the lyric video is going to come out later, and the music video will come out later potentially. But at this point in time, that's really the whole point in the song, is like there's the lyrics, it starts with just talking about how I used to care about fame, and I used to care about, it's actually maybe my favorite lyric in the song is I wanted to rule the world to make everyone tell me I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I used to be. I didn't realize what was motivating me was insecurity and all this stuff. But like, I'd like to put my money where my mouth is. I think that there's a difference between writing a song saying, hey, it's really good to love the world and be a loving person. But I'd like to demonstrate it by saying like, this song is just a gift to that charity. I'm saying that it's a gift towards to fight sex trafficking because you never know what happens over the life of
Right.
a song and a project. I'd like the ability to pivot if need be or whatever happens. But I'm committed to doing that, and it's a joy to do. So anybody who feels led, check out Agape International Missions. They freaking slay. If you end up checking out any of the Plague's music, or like Float Right On By is the name of the song, there's donation links that you can check out there. And if you stream it, you're making a donation in some way to the to fight sex trafficking. So let's do it.
Yeah, and I plan on putting that link to that the website for Agape, is what it's called. When I post this up on YouTube for people to be able to click onto that,
Awesome.
and everything. I'm gonna do my part in that as well, and help you do some good.
Great, go team.
Yeah, go team. But yeah, like I love this song, man. Like I really like this style of music has always been a style of music that just kind of I'm into like that cyberpunk stuff, you know, and so that's one of the first things that drawn me to when I first discovered Cell Dweller, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And like and so like I don't like to describe your music as one kind of thing. I just use the word eclectic because you could be any kind of style of music, even within the same song sometimes, you know. And I like that, I like that kind of mind with music because it keeps things interesting, it keeps you engaged, because you could be something like super heavy, or you could be something that you could even kind of dance to, you know. So I don't remember what the first song I heard from you was, to be honest, but I do know it's off of Future, and I want to give you some props for my favorite song off of that album, Will You Ever Know Me? Like, that song could move me to tears, man. Like, it is such a like powerful song. Like, I want to say that that's probably like my third or second favorite song I've heard from you, just because of how profound I think it sounds, you know? So I just want to sing you praises, man. I think you're a brilliant artist. I think you got a brilliant mind for the music you make. And I am all here for whatever you do, man. Like, I can have you on as many times as you have time for, help promote your stuff as best as I can. Just in a sense, be part of the team as far as like spreading your name around there, you know? So
I super appreciate that. I mean, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk to you here. I'm grateful that you put time and energy into it. It's not a small thing. And I know that your life is precious, and I just appreciate that you put any of the energy that we get while we're on this earth to uniting for any cause. So, and I also just appreciate knowing that, you know, as far as Will You Ever Know Me, there's certain songs when I write them, I'm in a place where I'm moved to tears and I'm trying to express something that's really profoundly heartbreaking for me. Like Clean Slate would be another one of those songs. So is like in the past off this record. And it's nice to know that us as a grieving person, if I make art about grief, that it can connect with people. So that's not a small thing. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very welcome, man. I do my best to make the people that I have on this podcast know that they're important to me, and that their music is important to me, and that what they're doing to me isn't anything small. It's profound and it has a purpose. So I hope you're around doing what you do for as long as you can do it. And as a friend and as a fan of yours, and it's been a pleasure for me having you on as well. I wasn't quite sure if it would work or not, because I knew how busy you were at the time and currently. So I just want to say that I also am not lost on that this takes time away from what you should be focusing on in your personal life, and say how much I appreciate you agreeing to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The feeling's mutual.
Thank you. And anything else you want to say before we go? Like maybe throw out some links to pages. Like you have your Facebook, you have, I'd imagine, a Bandcamp, your fixed profile.
Yeah, there's all just the normal social media. We are starting to take it seriously. And by we, I mean, I'm a solo artist, but I have a social media manager and a team here. So like we do post every day, and we are going to start streaming. We streamed once on Twitch, but we're going to start cross streaming. So if you follow us on YouTube or Twitch or Instagram, we post on a lot every day. You can, what we're really hoping to do is like open up platforms where we can be connecting with people live and show people the process of making music and have it be more interactive, which is something that I know we've been sorely missing over here. I get lost in the studio cave, and we're trying to do less of that and more of the interaction. So it's happening.
Everything will happen with time and when it needs to. So I'll be here for all of it and tune into what I can when I'm not working. So
yeah, it would be awesome to see you in there, like a friendly face. I appreciate any of the support. So thanks, Will.
Yeah, thank you. And again, this has been a lot of fun, and hopefully we could do it again when you have time. I'll reach out to you probably, let's say when the album's about to come out, something like that. And we can do a little chat, and see what works out.
Okay, cool, Will.
All right.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll let you get back to what you're doing, and enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.